This is Robert with Pioneer Smokehouses, and this is video part 2 of my introduction to the Char-Griller Smokin Pro 1224. Now, the part 2 here is a seasoning. I shot a video and it was a little too long, so I had to break it up into 2 parts that were nice and easy for you. So I hope you watched the first part, and if you did, this is the second part coming up, and we will be seasoning this smoker for the second time, and it's going to be a really fun process. I've already completed it, and the smoker is almost cooled off now. So let's go ahead and get you right into that video. When you go to season a smoker, if you want easy cleanup in the future, then you'll want to use a little bit of oil spray. Now, when you're doing an electric smoker, this is a little more important than an offset smoker. But the main reason that you're going to season your smoker is to burn off the manufacturing oils. They use oil on all of their punches and dies and any of their machinery, so that way their blades will last longer, and the oil is a lot cheaper than blades. So we want that to be gone. Once we do a light heat up on this thing to get that stuff gone, and that's 275 degrees, then what we'll do is we'll come back and we'll let it cool, and then we'll do a second heat up to set in this before we cook on it. Now I just put a light coat on there, and I'm going to do the same thing in the barrel on the bottom. So the goal here is to cover anywhere where you might get food debris, so that way if you need to clean it, it's oiled up and will be easier to clean. Now on an electric smoker and on this one, I like to hit the top just a little bit more, because the only main concern I have is debris getting on the top of the smoker or creosote and then dripping down onto my food. So the only part that I will clean is the grill rack itself and the top. If you have a drip tray in the bottom, you can just pick out that drip tray or tin foil and throw it away. So just down the middle, I'm going to hit it again in the area where it's most likely that food will be underneath it, so I can just wipe that clean anytime I want. And then that's it. This is generic vegetable oil or canola oil. You could use brand name if you want, but this is a lot cheaper. Now, next thing we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about the firebox, or smoker box, some people like to call it. This is where all the fire is going to happen. We're going to control the temperature by using our air input and our air output, but mostly we control temperature with the amount of fuel we put in. We don't want to be choking the fire out, because that'll get you dirty smoke, and then it can make your food taste bitter if you get too much of it. A little bit here and there when you're starting the fire is not really that big of a deal, but try to avoid it as much as possible, because over the time of a long cook, if you do it a bunch of times, that can add up, and then your food just won't taste good. I took an old grill grate and I added it in here, and I'll just pull this up here and then I'll show you some pictures. This grill grate came off of a broken Traeger, and if you look at some of my Traeger pellet smoker videos, you'll see the Traeger that I used, and it was used when I got it and I had repaired it, and then over the winter it got some pellets jammed in it and I broke the auger, and I'm not going to fix it again. So I went ahead and salvaged this grate out of there, and I'm probably just going to leave it at that. And I took the grate and I cut it in half. When I first cut it, half of it was just a little too big, and it's still, the way I did cut it, it's still just a little too long, but it's really, really close. So I flipped the bottom grate that comes with the smoker upside down so I could lift it up a little bit, and then I put these in there and overlapped them like this a little bit. And when I cut them, I left just a little bit of the edge out. And hold on one second. So I'm not sure how well you can see this, but I'm going to pull it up into the sunshine here in a second. When I cut it, I cut as close to the piece in the middle that I was going to discard, so that way there'd be prongs left on each one of these cross ribs. I'll get up here a little closer in the sunshine and you should be able to see that I used a cutting wheel, and I'll show you that. One of these cut-off wheels on a grinder, and that just cut it in a matter of seconds, no problem. Okay, so we've got that set up and ready to smoke. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and leave this open for a second, and then once we get everything started, we'll go from there. First thing I'm gonna talk about is that I like to start my charcoals in a chimney. This chimney's been around and has been working really good. You can tell by the temper damage there. And that's just normal. These things will last you a couple of years if you use them once a week or so. This one's about 2 years old, and I don't use it that much, but I'll probably be using it more now that I have this one. Now, I prefer a charcoal briquette, but the problem with briquettes is that when you're using a average quality briquette, they tend to leave a lot of ash behind. I like to use the Kingsford wood chip briquettes for cooking because they have a really good flavor. However, they leave a lot of the ash, which is a problem, and they also, you have to put a lot of them in to get a good temperature. I find that the lump charcoal actually has a more consistent, hotter temperature. It's a more plain flavor. There's no wood flavors, but if you're gonna do something like that, then you're gonna add wood chunks. Let's grab some wood chunks. This is what my local store had. Usually I use Western brand chunks, but I also like to get some like some splits. If I can get a couple of pieces of wood, I'll do that. Now, this is pecan, and that's my favorite wood for the most versatile cooking, but there's no pecan where I live. So if I want to buy pecan splits, then I need to actually buy them from a source somewhere, and I usually buy them in a box, and they come and they're about double the size of that, and there's a box full of them for like 30 bucks. I'll see if I can find a link for where I bought the last box and go there, but it's been a little while, so I can't be sure of the price. Now this is what I use for the Western barbecue, and this one is mesquite, and I think it works really good with beef, also well with pork, but I do prefer the pecan over that with pork. When you're using a wood like mesquite that's really strong, and you're using a lump charcoal that doesn't have a lot of extra flavor to it, then what you're gonna find that the mesquite's not gonna overwhelm any meat choice because you're using such a small amount of it. Now, my lump charcoal that I have today from my local store is oak. There's a lot of different kinds. Mesquite is very popular, but oak in my area is one of the most popular lump charcoals. This is what my local store had, and we're just gonna go with it and see how that works. And oh, look at that. That never happens. Every time I do it, that something goes wrong and then the bag doesn't open right. I better go buy a lottery ticket. Now that I got this open, what I like to do is when I do the first half of the bag, I'll just pick pieces out of it. When I get to the bottom half of the bag, I like to actually filter it. So what I'll do is I'll put a bucket and a grate on top of the bucket, and then I'll just set the charcoal on top of it that I plan on loading in when I do my next load. So I'll just set that bucket to the side over here, set some charcoal lumps on there, and then that way I don't have a bunch of pieces of small charcoals going in, and it helps me separate it out a lot. So now the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and use a little bit of this charcoal briquette. So I put about 8 of them in there, and I'm gonna make sure that I spread them evenly across the bottom. Oh, I got 9. I have my old beat up tongs that are just about ready to be thrown in the garbage. They got a lot of metal fatigue, so they have a hard time lifting up big pieces. They work great on briquettes, but I don't know how well they're gonna work on this lump charcoal. You can see that we've got some pretty good sized pieces. I'm going to take the bigger ones and set them right in the grill. I get a few of the smaller ones and I'm going to put them right inside the charcoal chimney to get them lit up. Now, if these are too big for you, you can hit them with a hammer and they'll bust up. Okay, that's all I need in the chimney. I'm going to go ahead and take this over to the grill and I'm going to get it lit. Now, I'll take a picture of that so when I come right back, you'll be able to see what I did. So we'll be back in a second. So I took the charcoal chimney over to the grill and you'll see the picture here where I set it down on the grill and then I turned it on. And I turn it on high to start with, and then as soon as it starts to get going to where I can see that we're starting to burn on the bottom, then I turn it down to low. The whole idea is just to get it lit and then to keep the airflow, and by having hot rising air, even on low setting from the propane grill, it will force the charcoal to start burning up. It only takes a little bit to get it lit, and then it goes. Now, if you have some matchlight charcoal, put 2 or 3 of those down in the bottom there first, and you could light it with a paper towel if you want. Anything will light it. I know a lot of people use newspaper with vegetable oil sprayed on it. Other people will just use the charcoal lighters, like a tumbleweed. I personally would like to avoid using the tumbleweeds just because I don't want to pay for them if I don't need to, and I don't see any reason when I have the propane grill there. But again, also a paper roll, like a toilet paper roll or a paper towel roll stuffed full of lint. Somebody made a comment about not using toilet paper rolls, but I think people are overthinking some things. We're running pretty good here. The top pieces really haven't lit yet. I'll pull one out and show you. You can see it's just a little bit of white around the edges. The other pieces are going pretty good. I'm just going to reposition it a little bit. And then I'm sure you could see that the fire is coming up. That's a nice thing about the lump, is that it gets a good flame going and there's a lot of gaps between it. So the burn is really good. We're going to go ahead and let this run for about another minute to 2 at the most, because I want to transfer it into there going really well. And then we'll see it take off right away. We'll be right back. We're going along pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and take this top piece that I turned over there out, and it's got white edges. We're not worried about it being going perfectly. We just want it to get started up there. This one's going really good. This one also looking really good. Oh yeah, it's staying lit when I brought it out. That's a perfect sign. And this one is blazing. Excellent. It cracked in half, so I'll be able to position those chunks real good. Now the rest of it is all briquettes, and I'm going to feed those in there on the top. And remember as you go to kind of leave a little gap for air in between each one, and that way they'll keep burning at a really good pace. Now the charcoal chimney is hot, so we'll need to set that somewhere where it can cool off for a minute. So I took a little video here of how it's burning, and it looks pretty good. So there's 2 more things that we're going to do here, and the first thing is that we're going to drop in a couple of these blocks. It's getting pretty hot in there, so you want to be careful. You can use your tongs. I just set it on the side here. Stuff one in the middle. A little bit bigger one's got a good idea for a little bit later on. And then just kind of like that. And what'll happen when those ones get to the fire, then they'll smolder a little bit before they light. Make sure that these blocks are not too close together or they'll light each other, and then that'll kind of defeat the purpose of getting them to light like a fuse. Now I have a little trick to get the burn going really well and also to add when it's actually going along, and that is a mini yard blower. Now, you don't have to use a mini yard blower. I think a better bet is actually a hairdryer set on low, or else a heat gun set on low. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and close this because I want to reduce the amount of ashes that get in there, especially with the fresh oil. Blow a little bit of these ashes off of here to start. And then slowly, I'm going to add air to that. You could also use a small desk fan, just don't get too close. Now doing this really stokes up the fire. And it is just going to go nuts. It's going well. I'm going to go ahead and shut the lid, and I'm going to verify that the vent is fully open. Now I'm going to sit here and I'm going to watch the temperature, and I'm going to make sure that it comes up to the 275 that I'm going for. And when it sits at that 275, if it goes a little past that, that's fine. What we want to do is avoid going up in the 400 range. You get in the 400 range, is just not good for this smoker at all. Like I said, it'll mess up the paint. So we just want to get it going good. And I'll start watching here for smoke. It should start coming out any minute now. It does take a minute to fill up the chamber and everything. But I can start to see it right there. And it's kind of hard because it's burning really good already. And the chunk of wood should actually generate a little bit of smoke. So it should burn just slightly dirty, if you want to call it that. But I can see it coming out, nice and clear smoke. If I was smoking on that, I would be really happy. So let's go ahead and take a break. For me, that'll probably be 30 minutes. For you, that'll just be 1 second. So it's been a little more than 30 minutes, probably closer to about 40. We were rolling along really good, and we started to get just a little hot. So I went ahead and pulled out a couple pieces of the lump charcoal and threw it into the fire pit, which will mean that our burn time will be shorter. But on the other hand, now I lowered the temperature just a touch. And the thing is that that just lets me know that I don't have to put in quite as much lump charcoal. Now, my gauge here, and I'll put a picture up here of that, a close up, and then you can see that we're running right in the 300 range at this gauge. I went ahead and I put these thermoprobes for the ThermoPro wired thermometer through the holes where the upper rack would go, so I can get an idea of the temperature. Now this one is pointed straight in there the way I want it, but the other one is not. The other one is pointed at a slight angle, which is giving it a higher temperature reading. So I'm going to put on my hot glove and I'm going to hold it in place for a minute here. Looks like we've stabled out almost exactly at 300. I'll show you here. It just dropped to 298. I don't know if you can see that from that camera. But I'm not going to keep holding this forever. I'm going to go ahead and just pull it out for now. And I'll just set it to the side. Remember, that's very hot. And then go ahead and open this with my glove on. Why not? And it's burning through, and it's kind of cool because there's a lump of wood here, and you can see that the fire was going into the cooking chamber, so the airflow is working perfect. Another thing is the V track that I put the charcoal on is working really good. When I had done it before, over time the charcoal was burying itself in ashes. And this is going to be something that I'm going to play with a little bit. I'm going to try turning the lower grate back over and seeing if I can get it down a little bit lower and still get good airflow. And that's, like I said, these are things that you just play with over time. And I would like it to be to where I could get those grates all the way down so I could slide the tray in and out, but I doubt that that's going to be the case. And then We're going to come back to here. I'll pull this out first. So we went up in temperature just a little bit. I think that opening that door gave it extra air, which I forgot to mention that I had closed the air vents halfway to slow the burning down a little bit and help lower the temperature. Really clean. You can't see hardly any smoke, but there's plenty of heat right here. I think that you could probably even cook a hamburger right over here if you got right down on top of it. You can see all the oil is pretty much set in, and that's what we were going for. Now, when I opened it, it just dropped to 275. It's still dropping just a little bit, but it's probably going to punch right back up there because that increased the airflow. And it is starting to go back up again. So if I just open this, give it a little burst of air, and then it'll jump right up. That's really cool to see how just changing a little bit of air here and there can affect your temperature so dramatically. And it's on the climb again. So I've set aside another piece to put in there, and I'll probably throw that in there and get a little bit more smoke going because I want to get a real good smoke seasoning in there. Now, if you don't get the smoke that you like, what I would do when the charcoal is done burning is I would take and fill up your pellet tray and set it in the offset smoker side and let it run overnight. That's not going to generate hardly any heat at all, but if you fill it up all the way and light it right before you go to bed in the morning, it'll probably be just about done. So this thing at full, I usually get about 10 hours out of it. I don't know if it depends on the pellet quality or not, but I find that most of the pellets are almost identical, so I'm sure there's some of them that are higher quality, but all the ones that are readily available to me are not. They're all pretty much similar, even in taste and performance. So my next plan will be to deal with the heat deflection system somehow and probably put that gasket sealer around the door. And I might use a brick or something to weight the door when it's not in use. That way it'll force some pressure down on the gasket because we were leaking just a little bit across the top and it is pretty hot across the top. I want to make sure everything gets forced into this other chamber. So we'll play with modifications at a later time, but that'll cover everything for this video. We're just going to let this thing finish burning out and then cool off. And then I'll probably make some small modifications by putting some of those bolts in there. And then after that, the next video will be the cook that I already did, which is the pork shoulder video. And I got to tell you that it turned out great. I made some steaks the first night for dinner, cut like just perfect. And then the next day we did pulled pork, and that was yummy. I think I'll pop the picture of pulled pork up here because I didn't put that in the video from the other one, but the pulled pork turned out great. And the difference between cooking on a charcoal offset and a pellet grill is night and day, and even an electric, you just won't experience anything even close. The taste is just so much better. Not that it's bad on a pellet, and the convenience is really nice, but you'll know right away once you start cooking on one of these that what you've gained in taste. So anyway, if you saw anything you like in the video, all the links are below. And also there's a link to the review article on this with all the information about this and details written up, square inches and how to deal with different situations. I did that with a buddy of mine, smoker, a couple of years ago, and his smoker turned out to be great. Here is what a picture of a smoker that is 4 years old, that is well used, looks like. I want you to see that. These things, I would expect them to get about 5 years if you use it on a regular basis, and that's probably about it. But they're not that expensive, so I don't think that that's unreasonable at all. So again, thanks for watching. Affiliate links below. Have a great day.